Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Need More Coffee Please with Cisco and Melissa. My name is Cisco.
I'm Melissa.
And today we're going to talk about something that happened to us going on 70 years now. That was what is now called the Camp Fire that happened in Paradise, California in November of 2018. Something that we have really thought about talking about. We actually attempted to record an episode about it months ago, and it just wasn't it for whatever.
Vibes were off.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it just wasn't it. So hopefully this is it, and I'll let Melissa take it from here, and then we'll go from there.
But before we get too far ahead, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and
Comment.
Well, you can comment after, but yeah, hit subscribe and like.
Yes. Thank you.
We appreciate it. So yeah, a little bit of a preface before we get into it. Yeah, I think we've really kind of struggled with this one. Ironically, I feel like, I mean, it was pretty traumatic, definitely, and it took years, you know, and it still kind of hits every now and then. But, you know, we've just had so much happen since then. It kind of doesn't feel like the most traumatic thing that's happened to us, I guess.
There's been more dramatic.
Yeah, definitely. But it was extremely shocking and difficult, you know, on so many levels. But it wasn't, you know, this one isn't just our story. And I think that's why too I want to be a little sensitive with how we approach it. You know, this happened to 28,000 people or something along those lines. And, you know, ours thankfully wasn't even nearly as traumatic as a lot of other people experienced that day. And yeah, so with that in mind, we just want to, you know, obviously tread lightly. So what we'll be sharing is our perspective and story of what happened that day. Again, this is not everyone's story. There are some that are much more dramatic and traumatic. So, you know, just take that into account. They are releasing a movie, I think, pretty soon. I think it's going to be in the theaters. It's like with Matthew McConaughey and America Ferrera, I think, is in it.
Yeah.
It's called like The School Bus.
Yeah, it's about the school bus that got caught in the fire. Yes.
We won't be watching it, but
yeah, no.
but you should.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be.
And there was a documentary exciting as well. I think that's on Netflix.
Yeah, there's a few documentaries. We've never been able to watch any of them.
We just can't.
Yeah, some people have. I don't know. The second it starts, I'm like, crying. So I just don't want to put myself through that. But I've heard, you know, there are some pretty good ones out there, and I'm sure the movie will be good. Yeah. Probably really intense. But anyway, so yeah, it'll probably be at least a 2-part series. Yeah, a lot of people have asked why we haven't done this one. So that's all why we haven't. It just, I don't know. But we're going to try to again. So yeah, so this part we're going to I'll share my story. So we were separated that morning of the fire. He had gone to work and I was home, you know, getting the kids ready for school and sending them off to school. And then I was going to head down the hill for work later that morning. So we weren't even together that morning. Also, it so happened to occur on my birthday. So I think that's a little bit of a weird twist to it all too. It just has kind of felt personal.
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't know that just, yeah, has really added a weird twist to all of it. But yeah, so I'm going to share my perspective of what, happened that morning, and then he's going to share his. And then we just wanted to share some like facts about the fire. There's obviously been quite a few that have happened before and since then, that were, to this scale or near it or worse. And it's, there's one thing of a fire happening in a town, and then there's another when it just takes out a whole area or an entire town, like in our case. I mean, or even I think of those floods that happened in North Carolina and Tennessee earlier, or was it late last year? It's just a devastation your mind cannot wrap around. Yeah, like,
and those places will never be the same.
No, they will not.
Maui and
the Palisades
in LA, in this one in Paradise, when not only just homes burn down, but in those cases as well, like so many of the forests and the trees burn down that are 50, 60, 70 years old. And those are gone.
Landmarks,
things that
really,
those aren't going to come back. It's going to take another 100 years for those to come back, for that town to look anything close to what it was before, and it's never going to be exact. So it's definitely devastating and life-changing for the people involved, especially for those who do move back, who do choose to move back. It's just not going to be the same.
Yeah. So we're going to split these into 2 separate episodes. It got a little longer and a little more emotional than we expected. Talking through this, it's been a really long time since we really talked in length through that day, and kind of hit us both pretty hard. So we're going to start with my walkthrough of that day, and then we'll release Cisco's later on this week. So
Yep, for sure. Well, we'll split it up just so then it won't be too long, and it'll be a little bit more easy to digest, hopefully. And thanks for watching.
Yep.
We will, when we post Melissa's, we'll post when we're going to put my version of it, and we would encourage and love if you would like and comment on both of those. And thanks for watching. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate y'all.
Bye. So Paradise was my hometown. That was the place I grew up. I was born and raised there. I moved out when I was 18, went to Bible college, and pretty much never went back. I mean, except to visit. But it was not ever somewhere I wanted to move back to. And after the church plant had ended, we just really wanted to be by family. And, especially for me, I just really strongly wanted to, move back, raise my kids in, the things that I got to do when I was a kid, with camping and being in the woods, and just kind of, a life that we hadn't really, that they hadn't been able to experience up to that point. And mostly to, be by my family. They all lived in Paradise, or, in that area. And it was hard, always missing out on everything and being far away. So it took a couple years for us to be able to make that move. And we both were working, full-time jobs. He was working 2 jobs, and we were just like saving and doing everything we could to get back. So 2018, we finally got back there. We moved in June, And actually, me and the kids did. He stayed in Colorado to work for about another month before he was able to join us. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But, we spent that summer living with my sisters, different times. Spent about a month and a half with each of them. And that was really uh, much more difficult than we thought it was going to be, and a lot longer than we thought it was going to be. We weren't expecting, to have to depend on family for that long. It was really hard to find a rental up there, and we finally did. And we moved in the end of September. So we found this adorable house. As you can see here, it was just so cute. It was yellow, white picket fence. Had a beautiful like garden in the front, and yeah, it was just amazing. After what we had gone through the whole summer, just finally having our own place. And the kids loved it. We loved it. It was right, the end of the street was on the canyon. Um, and it was perfect for us. So anyway, that was the end of September, and then the fire happened November 8th. So we were there for about a total of 5 weeks. We hadn't even fully unpacked yet, hadn't hung pictures, like most of our stuff was still in boxes. So, yeah, like we said, happened my birthday. I woke up to a bunch of text messages from my siblings, and my son had come in the room, and he was like, "Mom, there's like this giant, plume of smoke, um, at the end of the street." And I was like, what? And that night, so to back up a little bit, it had been really, really dry. We hadn't gotten any rain, like pretty much, I don't think it had rained one time since we had moved there. So that was 5 months, and it probably hadn't rained, I think, a lot longer before that. So it was very, very dry. Paradise was in like, it was in the foothills, but it was a very like mountain town, like tons of really tall pine trees, just like thick pine trees. So it was kind of a tinderbox. And there had been talks of what could happen potentially if kind of the perfect storm and a fire situation. And, but it was kind of one of those lore kind of things, like, oh, like the big one, like the big earthquake that's supposed to, take out California, the thing that they've talked about for decades, but has never happened. Um, and anyway, so that night we had a, really crazy windstorm come through. Kind of kept us up all night with how loud it was. We had a giant oak tree like kind of hanging over the house, and we were like, oh gosh, like expecting it to fall any minute. And anyway, so when he came in saying that there was a fire at the end of this, or a big plume of smoke like in the canyon, I was like, oh great. But again, not at all are you thinking what's about to happen is going to happen. So I think I had called or had texted my siblings a picture, which we'll show here too. And, I was like, I think there's a fire. So that was about 7:45 in the morning. And we I left to take them to school at around, 8 o'clock. And by that time, in that span of 15 minutes, I'd heard fire trucks, flying down our street. And, so I'm thinking, okay, they've got it. Like they're on it. It's going to be okay. And then as we pulled out to leave, I look in the rearview mirror, and there's literally flames all in the canyon behind me. And, that was pretty shocking to see. On the way to, take them to school, Elias was my last drop off, but his school was the closest to our house, just like a couple minutes down the road, not even probably like a minute. And so we had to pass that school to go to the other kids. And there was a fire in the field next to his school. And I could see that they were turning cars away and telling them that school was canceled. Um, Again, that was not some, Paradise is pretty used to having fires, but I don't know, something just felt different that morning. And I can't really put my, put it into words. It just felt different. And I had, again, your mind is not thinking at all like what's about to happen is about to happen. I think it was just like your spidey senses, like your spirit kind of just knowing. But your brain's like, no, we're fine. Like, this is always fine. Like, the houses, that are on the edge of town, like, they might be in trouble, but we're not in trouble. So it was really, really dark that morning. Just very creepy. The wind had stopped at that point. Like, it was like eerily quiet. Um, and like the tops of the trees were white, which was really strange. It was all from ash, but we didn't really know that then. But it just kept getting darker and darker. And there were like burning leaves falling on the cars and like, big pieces of ash falling. But you're not really understanding like what is exactly happening. I never got a evacuation alert on my phone. My sister did, and she was, just a couple minutes down the road from us. So that was the only way I knew that we'd been evacuated, because we were in the same zone. And so she had called me and told me that she's like, drop the kids off at school, but you need to go home and pack up some stuff because our zone's been evacuated. So I drove them over to the school, dropped them off. My sister that had told me this, she has like an insane level of discernment, like gift of discernment, that I don't know anyone else that has her just ability to really discern a situation and a person and just so many things. But so I saw her as I pulled in to drop the kids off, and the look on her face was like, it just shook me, because I was like, something's very, very wrong. Um, Obviously she didn't know what was about to happen, but I think her spirit knew, and she was like very, very concerned. And so, I hadn't, like, we weren't even able to talk, because she was like had to run in and call, make a bunch of phone calls and everything. And so it was just kind of crazy and hectic, and everyone just kind of had this like, I don't know, like just this weird energy, I guess. Like I think we were all trying to be okay, but we knew something was wrong. So at that point, I got a call from my oldest son's school, from the high school, saying that they were canceling school, which was a little concerning because they were in the middle of town. Um, and so were my other the kids I had just dropped off. Their schools in the middle of town too. And so um, I just thought it was out of an abundance of caution. And so I was like, okay, I took my oldest son and then my youngest son with me back to the house. So on the way back to the house, we kept seeing like little spot fires like all over town. And again, that was not normal in any of the, fire situations that had happened in Paradise, at least in my memory. And but they were all pretty small. And so I was like, okay, I guess I hope that they're, on it. And there was, again, just a very weird energy with the traffic. Like, people were in a sense of panic. And at that point, I, was still very unaware of what was going on. And I think a lot of other people were aware, not a lot, but there were some who either lived on the canyon or were coming from a direction that, I had no idea there. So it was just a weird dynamic, because you had the people who knew what was happening, and then you had a lot of people who didn't know, had no clue what was happening. And so, it was just a very hectic, intense, like panicky energy. And my son, my youngest son, definitely picked up on that. And he was pretty hysterical the whole ride back to the house. And he was just like, Mom, can we please leave? Let's just go. Let's just go. Let's leave town. And I'm like, I can't leave your siblings at school, And I was like, we're just going to go grab some stuff and I'll take you back over to grandma's. And, my mom, she lived in the middle of town too. So I totally thought that that was perfectly safe. And so we get to the house, and again, like I could see the flames in the canyon. It was just really quiet on my street, which wasn't, totally abnormal, but just more than, I don't know, it like not even, we always had these chickens that would, come into our yard every morning. They would wait by the gate until one of us would go open it, and they would, just come into our yard and eat all the bugs. And they were nowhere to be seen, which was not like, that was the first time since we had moved in, because they were always there, and they were nowhere to be seen. It was just, I don't know, there was just a weird feeling again. And so I get in the house, and I just went into a complete panic. Again, not because I knew at all what was happening, but I think my mind was trying to convince myself it was okay, and my spirit was like, get the heck out. So I couldn't even think of anything to grab or where anything was. I'm like, I don't even know where our suitcases are, or like what do I do? And again, my son was like, can we leave? Can we leave? Like, let's just go. And so I was supposed to work later on that morning. And so I was like, I'm just going to grab my makeup. And we had like a box of our important papers that was always like, okay, there's a fire, like we grab that kind of thing. And that was literally what I grabbed. And I was like, let's just go. I'm like, I'm sure it's going to be fine. Like, we'll figure it out later. So we get in the car. My oldest son had thankfully thought to grab a laundry basket. It was all dirty clothes, but it was actually stuff that the kids wore. So, it didn't have a ton in it, but it had something. And he grabbed that and threw it in the car. And so then I started to head to my mom's. And around this time, I think I had finally got a hold of Cisco. The phone lines were being super funky. People were trying to call and not going through. I had forgotten a phone charger, and I think my phone was like at 2% or something. So I was trying to not use it very much, but also needing to. And he had called and said that they, that the town was under evacuation, and he was, being sent home to come grab stuff. So I was like, okay, well, we'll meet. I think we had decided to meet somewhere. I can't really remember, but I, at that point, was still planning on dropping my son off at my mom's. And on my way there, my sister called me and was like, she was like, you need to come pick up the kids and get out. And she was like, just don't, and I was like, well, I'm going to drop Elias off. She's like, no, don't drop him off. You need to get out right now. And again, like, she's someone that I don't question when she just knows things and situations. And so I was like, okay, we're just going to go. And so I went and picked up the kids, and we just headed out of town. And I remember I hadn't had coffee yet, and we were driving past Starbucks. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just swing in really quick. And the kids were like, no, Mom, and we look over, and the drive-through was full of people. And I remember, I can't remember if it was our oldest son or a second oldest, but one of them was like, yeah, it's all the stressed out moms getting their pumpkin spice lattes. Anyway, it was just a funny memory, but we laughed, but obviously not knowing the situation. And at the same time, I'm like, I wonder if they know that the fire, like the town is under evacuation essentially. um all these people in the drive-through and the workers and everything. So as we're leaving town, we lived, Paradise is kind of on a triangle, and there's canyons on all sides. So the fire had come in from the canyon over here where we lived. And when you drive down to Chico, there's a canyon on this side. And as we were driving, we're seeing that whole canyon is on fire too. And at the same time, we're driving down to Chico, and this traffic coming up was completely stopped. Like there were so many people trying to get back up the hill. Most of the people, it was a very small town. So most of the jobs and the people worked down in Chico. Um, so most people had, left that morning for work after dropping their kids off at school. And when they, found out that their zone was under evacuation, they were all trying to get back up to get their kids and their belongings and, animals and stuff like that. And, I was glad that our side of the street was pretty empty. Like there was some traffic going down, but not a lot. But coming back up, it was a complete, standstill of cars. And so Cisco and I had connected again at that point, and we're like, I was like, don't even bother coming up here. Like, you're never going to make it. There's so much traffic. And he was saying the same thing, just trying to get over, to the Skyway was impossible with the traffic. And so we had decided to meet, I think, in the parking lot of Costco. And so, I hit traffic when I got to the bottom of the hill, but that was really the first time that we had hit any traffic at all. And I was so thankful, because at that point we were pretty safe, and but also it was just like knowing how many people were still on the hill. And it's a very bottleneck situation. Like there's only 2 exits out of town, and they're both 2-lane roads. So just trying to picture that many people trying to get out at one time. What we didn't know was that the second exit, the lower exit out of town, was completely engulfed in fire at that point. A lot of the people in the town didn't know that, so many were trying to go, thinking that Skyway was going to be harder to, get out of town on. They headed to the lower exit, and it was a devastating situation. So thankfully I hadn't, decided to do that, and had gone the Skyway route. So when we met up at the Costco parking lot, I remember just getting out, and I suddenly was like shaking so bad. Like my teeth were chattering. Like I was just like shaking. And it was like freezing cold. Like it literally felt like it dropped to 0 degrees. At that point, the sky was like so dark, it looked like midnight. Like there was no light whatsoever. And yeah, I just remember like, I'm sure it was adrenaline and all kinds of things that I had no idea what was happening inside of me. But like I was like convulsing. I was shaking so bad. So yeah, we headed over to my niece who lived in Chico. We headed over to her house, and we just essentially waited. My sisters were both working at the school that my kids were at. And they were frantically just trying to get a hold of parents and figuring out how to get the kids all down the hill. Parents weren't able to make it up the hill, so that was a disaster. And they were just throwing kids in cars of people who, were going to head down. And because that was all they could do. Like at that point, it was just like a get everyone out of town situation. So, my mom, I think, had waited a little bit because, again, she was in the middle of town. No one ever would have thought that they would, be evacuated. Like in all of our years of living in paradise, not once had we been under an evacuation order because we were, in the middle of the town, and none of the fires had ever reached that point. Um, and so it had taken a while for them to get an evacuation order. And when they did, it was them and everyone else trying to leave. And there were other, family members with that were, horrific stories, and pretty much didn't think they were going to make it out, making phone calls, to our family members, like pretty much saying goodbye. And thankfully they all, everyone that we personally knew made it out okay that day. But I think there was 88 people that died. But the thing about these fires is the number that they say is just so, like, everyone is like, that's knows that that's not real, that those numbers that they give of um the death is, like, there were so many homeless people that were in the, like, deep in the woods, that I don't see how they made it out. Like, there's no possible way. People who were up there, during, like, trying, the law enforcement and firefighters that were trying to get people out of the town, the things that they saw, they all say, like, there's no way that that was the number. um and then you just have the people who have strokes and heart attacks and all of that, right at, because of the fire, because of the high stress of that day, and just, the aftermath. um it's always like hundreds, if not thousands of more, than what they, than the death toll that they give. So anyway, that's just a little side note. But in any of these, situations with the wildfires or natural disasters, like, that death toll number is literally only the bodies they find. And it's always so much higher. But so at this point, I think I will let Cisco share his side. So